viewers, and welcome to another random Cedars video. I'm sorry it's been so long. It's been ages since I've done one of these. Last time you guys saw me, I was gallivanting around the Croatian coast. But I would like to, now and then, talk about things other than the subjects that I usually deal with on the other channel. The name of which is changing, but just for the record, I don't intend to change the name of this channel, so don't worry. This channel remains as Random Cedars. And what I've decided to do is film in a slightly different part of the bunker, so it's a bit less in your face as to what the main subject of the other channel is. Anyway. All of that out of the way, I want to talk about The Mandalorian. Wow! What an amazing series. What can I say specifically that isn't just gushing? It's just the perfect blend, as far as I'm concerned, of fan service and new stuff. I remember watching the first couple of chapters of season 1 and being a bit thrown off by the pacing. The pacing was quite slow and plodding, and it's not kind of what you expect from Star Wars. With Star Wars, you expect to be flung around and taken from planet to planet at breakneck speed, and this was far more slow and in many ways immersive, and I actually have come to love that about The Mandalorian. I like the fact that it takes its time. I want to be able to explore the Star Wars universe. I want to feel settled in an environment, whatever environment Mando finds himself in. I don't want to be whisked necessarily in the Millennium Falcon to another world at breakneck speed. I mean, there's a place for that, don't get me wrong. But you can't help but feel more attuned to and more immersed in the Star Wars universe when they do it at that pace. And for me, it's kind of evocative of the pace of the very first Star Wars film ever, A New Hope, as we now know it, 1977. If you think about it, the first 30 minutes or so of that film, apart from, you know, all of the fighting and action as Vader boards the ship, you're then taken down to Tatooine and you're essentially just following two robots who are lost in a desert for quite some time. And that was the pace of the original Star Wars, and it seems that The Mandalorian is using that pace. So it's kind of, although it was jarring to begin with, when you compare it to the prequels and the new trilogy, if you think about it, it's old school Star Wars, isn't it? And I absolutely love it. I think it's brilliant. I love the Western feel. You know, the theme music is, well, it could have come straight out of a Western as far as I'm concerned. But it also, a lot of the dialogue seems very Western inspired, and it fits perfectly, I think, in that world of bounty hunters and mercenaries. It just fits perfectly. And I love the fact that, again, there's just the right amount of fan service. I mean, I don't really want this to be a spoilers thing. I might as well say, I think it's fairly obvious that Boba Fett is going to re-emerge in Season 2. Re-emerge he does. And it's just done brilliantly. He's a real badass. And we all knew he was a badass. But I watched that episode with Deanna. Deanna absolutely loves The Mandalorian, by the way. And she's not really a sci-fi nerd, but she's really enjoyed the new trilogy of Star Wars films, and she enjoys watching Mandalorian. She even said to me, you know what, I think I am more excited about The Mandalorian than I was about Game of Thrones. And that's saying something, because she was all over Game of Thrones. So The Mandalorian is her new Game of Thrones, which kind of says it all when we're talking about someone who isn't invested necessarily in Star Wars or in science fiction. Anyway, after we watched that chapter where Boba Fett re-emerges, and he was kind of hinted at in season 1, but he properly re-emerges in season 2, in the last chapter that we watched, the last episode. And Deanna was saying, well, okay, so where does he come from? Where does this character first emerge? And I was explaining about how Boba Fett was always in the first trilogy, the original trilogy of films, mostly in The Empire Strikes Back and his death in Return of the Jedi. You just don't see that much of him. He's just this shadowy figure in the background. And I immediately pulled up on YouTube a compilation video that someone had made. It was only like 15, 20 minutes long. That's how much Boba Fett appears in the original trilogy. And I pulled up this video to show Deanna where Boba Fett comes from, and she was kind of underwhelmed that this kind of cult character from the Star Wars trilogy was really just this shady character in the background who looks kind of cool, but doesn't really have that much dialogue, isn't really involved in too much action. He just basically, his job is to look mean and badass and cool, and that's it. And he dies rather ingloriously in, well, he doesn't die, obviously, but he supposedly dies in Return of the Jedi. And you compare that Boba Fett with the Boba Fett that we saw in The Mandalorian, it's night and day. Suddenly, Boba Fett is a fully fleshed out character who doesn't necessarily need the suit. Is it Beskar? The Beskar suit, in order to inflict damage. He can take out a whole bunch of stormtroopers, we've learned, just with a funny shaped stick. He's more than competent, it turns out. Even, fairly aged. I love the fact that they're using the exact same actor that they used in the prequels, because obviously Boba Fett was the clone of his father Jango Fett, and they reference that very nicely. He's aged, but he's still a real badass. And in that particular episode, again, I hate to do spoilers. I've come this far, why not? If you don't like spoilers, watch the latest Mandalorian episode and then come back. That solves that. Yeah, I was obviously gutted that they took Grogu, is it now the name of the little Yoda baby Yoda? I was gutted, but somehow, and the ship gets destroyed, which was also very, very upsetting, because we've grown quite attached to that ship, in almost like a Millennium Falcon kind of way. It feels like part of the furniture being on board that ship, again, because of the slow and immersive way in which these chapters are filmed. So you're genuinely gutted when the ship gets blown up and Grogu gets stolen, but you're also sort of smiling because Mando is teaming up with Boba Fett, who we've now learned is a total badass, and the other character as well. Sorry, I'm rubbish at remembering the names of all the characters and ships and that kind of thing. But the chapter left me with a smile on my face. And isn't that what science fiction's supposed to do? It's supposed to entertain you. It's supposed to transport you to another place. That's what I want from my sci-fi. I want to be taken to a different universe completely. I want to forget momentarily what it's like to live in this universe, and with all the problems and politics and Brexit and Trump of this universe. I want to be taken away and transported. And The Mandalorian does that masterfully. It's a masterclass as far as I'm concerned in science fiction. How would I rank it alongside the films? That's a tricky one. I haven't decided, because it's almost like an unfair exercise, isn't it? Because the films had to kind of be breakneck speed, particularly the new trilogy had to get through a lot. It had to hand over from the old generation to the new generation and end the Skywalker saga in a satisfying way, which I realise there's a lot of contentiousness around Star Wars, but I believe it managed to do that. And it had to do it at this breakneck speed where you're kind of bewildered at all of these different worlds that you're being taken to. 1 minute you're on one planet, the next minute you're on another planet, and this constant parade of different characters that you're being introduced to. Again, I understand why they did it, but Mandalorian is far more enjoyable. I like the fact that the plot is easy to follow. It's not like this super complicated thing where you're running algebra in your head trying to figure out who's who and what's what. So it seems almost unfair to try and compare Mandalorian to the films. I'm not even sure that you should do that, because it's a different format, isn't it? It's a different canvas to be working on when you have the luxury of telling a story in a series versus in a movie within 2 hours or whatever. So maybe I'll revisit that whole idea of where it ranks alongside the films in a future video. But suffice to say, this is kind of as good as it gets when it comes to Star Wars. I think it's safe to say. Certainly that exercise of comparing the original Boba Fett appearances in the original trilogy immediately after watching the very latest emergence of Boba Fett in the Star Wars universe. Again, it's night and day, and without wanting to moan about Star Wars fans too much, it is one of the things that kind of irritates me, is that Star Wars fans just can never be satisfied, can they? I hate to generalize, but it feels like, even though I am a Star Wars fan, it feels like Star Wars fans of my age are overwhelmingly just kids who want to have their childhood recreated. And that's just not how it works. You had your childhood. You're not going to have it again. And they basically won't be happy unless they get exactly the same films that they got when they were kids, which, again, it's just not going to happen. Future generations, including maybe, hopefully, my children, will be fans of the current iterations of Star Wars, including the new trilogy, including Solo. They're going to love those films. They really are. And they're going to be like, why were the original Star Wars fans so against them? Because they want what they can't have. They want to have their childhood recreated, even though it happened once and won't happen again. Anyway, end of rant about Star Wars fans. If you haven't seen The Mandalorian already, and you're in two minds, and you don't mind me ruining it for you with all these spoilers, go and watch it. But I felt I needed to just unload about this wonderful new series that I'm very much enjoying. There's maybe a couple of chapters left in this season. Who knows? But I'm very much looking forward to them, and I'm now so enthralled by the whole experience that there's no longer any trepidation when I'm about to watch one. There's no like, oh, is this going to be a good episode or not? I'm along for the ride. I'm just enjoying it and feeling privileged to experience Star Wars told in this particular way. I think it's brilliant. And that's basically all I have to say about The Mandalorian. And that's it.